So Claude Code just made some pretty big updates compared to all the other ones that they've done over the past few months. So I'm going to go over some of the ones that caught my eye. So the first one is adding support for running skills and slash commands in a forked subagent context. So it's like a lot of jargon. Like, what does that actually mean? So let's go into a project and let me show you the skill. So this is just a random skill. This is not a skill that I would actually use in a project, but this is one that I pulled from their GitHub. So currently when you have a skill, they look something like this. This is the front matter. This is the stuff that you see at the very beginning of a skill. Tells it like, what's the name, what's the description of the skill. So currently you don't have this thing called context fork. And so when you don't have that, what'll happen is when you run this brand guidelines skill in Claude Code, it will start using up tokens from your main session. But when you have context fork here, you save it, and then you run the skill, it'll run it as a subagent. So all the token usage from that skill will be isolated and it won't take up the tokens from your main session. The second one is automatic skill hot reload. So basically this is whenever you make an update to a skill. So for example, let's say I remove this and I save it. So previously what would happen while I was running this Claude Code session was I would need to exit, then I would need to run Claude again. And only then would this skill now load correctly given the new updates. But now what's going to happen is it's going to continuously be checking for any updates to the skills. So I don't have to reopen a new session. So as soon as I add this context fork and I save, it should automatically reload that now in this Claude Code session. You can now get Claude Code to respond in a specific language reliably once you update the settings. So what does that look like? So right now, so you can see this. So let's try running this. Write me a love letter. So it's going to run Claude Code. And this is my settings file right now. So it should be in English. Yep. So now if I go comma language Japanese, whoops, and I save that and I run the same prompt, it should write the love letter in Japanese. There you go. All right. So the next one is going to be these pre-tool use, post-tool use, and stop hooks that they added to agents. So basically what this is, let's show you here. Whenever a subagent runs, you can have it do something before it runs the subagent, and you can have it do something specific after it runs the subagent. So an example of this that I saw on YouTube that was pretty cool was this guy basically has, he has a Cloudflare deploy agent set up so that for his application, anytime he's done building locally and he wants to deploy it to Cloudflare to be in production, it will run this and it'll do it for him. And so before the tool runs, first, it'll basically run some testing to make sure that it runs. So you can see this pre-tool use hook. You can see command, it's changing the directory, and then it's checking for TypeScript errors. Then it runs the agent. And then after the agent is done, basically it'll tell you whether the endpoint was produced correctly, whether it was deployed correctly, or if it wasn't, and if there were any errors. And then finally, at the very end, which is really cool, I thought a really cool touch that he added, once it's totally done, it'll actually send him like a Mac OS notifications. You know, those little things on the right that you see every once in a while? It'll send him a notification that, hey, productionize your application, and it's totally done. So I thought that was super cool and super useful. You can imagine the kinds of things that you can run with this. This is probably one of the most useful updates that was added to this Claude Code update. One other reason why this is super useful is because previously you did have pre-hooks and post-hooks that you could run for agents, but you could only do that for all agents that run. So you would have one pre-hook, one post-hook, and that would run for every single agent that runs. But with this update, you can specify a specific pre-hook and a specific post-hook per agent. And that's where this is super powerful. You can also deny certain agents from running inside your project. So you can go deny task agent name. So let's give it a specific agent. So we have brand guidelines. So we can say brand guidelines. And now this agent won't be able to run inside of this specific project. This is a small update, but previously you would have had to do Shift Tab to enable plan mode, like I just did right there. But now you can also enable plan mode just by going /plan. So that's just a nice addition. They also added support for once true for hooks. So what does that mean? So previously when I was showing you the Cloudflare deploy agent, you can just add once true and it'll make sure that a hook is only run once inside of a session. And so if you run that same agent twice, it won't run that hook again if you had that enabled. They also added a slash context so you can see how much tokens your skills are taking up. You can also do Control O now to see what it's currently thinking about as it's running. So you can see this is what's currently happening. You can now trigger skills as a slash command. So you can go brand guidelines and you can see what tools that it's running in real time. This is just initializing and you can see what it's doing. So previously if a subagent was running, what would happen is sometimes it would ask you if you give it permission to do a certain thing, you would see yes, no, maybe. And if you exit it out, like you hit escape, then it would just stop running. And so now what'll happen is if you hit escape, it'll try other approaches to try to solve the problem if you don't like what it wants to do. So this is a pretty big change for me, but the creator of Claude Code, Boris Cherny, he basically said that Ultrathink doesn't really do anything anymore because thinking is on by default everywhere. So, I mean, I used to do this a lot until today, actually. So anytime that I ran anything, I would say, Ultrathink at the end of it. And this was basically a special command that would tell it to, hey, I want you to think a lot about this before you actually do anything. But what he's saying is now you don't have to do this. It's just on by default. So another thing they added was a specialized bash command agent. So you can see if you go at bash, you can see agent bash. So basically what I can have it do is run bash commands as a subagent, and it'll not take up context within the main session. It'll run it within the subagent context. So it'll keep your main session clean. So you can say like, bun build and run this project, and it'll run that. And when you're running this, you can actually move it to the background. So you can go Control B and it'll run it in the background so that you don't have to think about it. They also added a / remote-env / command so that you can have your code run on a server instead of your local computer. So for example, let's go / remote-env. You can see what it says, configure the default remote environment. So you can run that. So I'm using test. So that's just what I have running here, and it'll run on a server instead of running on my local laptop. So that's a pretty cool addition. All right, so that's basically all I had. These are some pretty cool updates that I thought Claude Code has released recently, and I will update you whenever they do another update. I'm going to be posting a lot of videos on how I actually use Claude Code in production in the future. So if you guys want to see that, subscribe. I also have a podcast called Forward Deployed that, if you're interested, you can watch. What we do in that is I'll talk to people who are working at enterprises actually deploying AI, where you actually want to see what are people using AI for inside of big organizations. Because I think there's a lot of BS going around about like ROI on these things. So yeah, if you're interested in that, just take a listen. Just look it up, Forward Deployed. And the first episode was with, he was a senior director of design at Rovio, which is a company that made Angry Birds. He's pretty sophisticated with how they were using it internally. And then he left to start his own AI native gaming company. So yeah, if you're interested in that, just look for it. And yeah, see you on the next one.